Welcome. Today we're exploring Postman, a powerful API platform that's changing the way developers and testers work with APIs. But what exactly is Postman? Postman is a tool that allows you to design, test, and document APIs seamlessly, all in one place. Whether you're building new APIs or debugging existing ones, Postman simplifies the process by giving you an interactive interface to send requests, analyze responses, and automate repetitive tasks. But before we get into Postman's feature, let's quickly understand what APIs and HTTP requests are, because we will be using these terms more and more from now on. The majority of modern internet and mobile apps rely on APIs or application programming interfaces. Consider APIs to be gateways that allow communication between different systems. And how do APIs communicate? They use HTTP requests, such as GET, to retrieve information such as list of users, POST to send information such as submitting a form or creating a new record, PUT to update the existing data, and DELETE, as the name suggests, removes data from server. The server processes this request and responds with data, often in formats like JSON or XML. And to briefly show how this works in Postman, we can see that a request from Postman is sent to the API server, where the server processes the request and sends out a response. Postman then receives this response and displays it in the interface. Postman stands out because it's more than just a testing tool. Here are its key features that make it indispensable. First of all, API request made simple. Like we have previously discussed, API requests like GET, PUT, POST, and DELETE can be sent and we can see their real time responses. It is great for isolating and observing how the APIs behave. Environment variables. In development, staging, or production environments, we're often using the same API. Postman allows you to use variables to switch seamlessly between these setups, saving you time and avoiding errors. Collections. Not only does it make the APIs easy to manage and share, it is highly useful for testing and suit. Automation with test. Add scripts to automate tasks like validating responses, checking status codes, or ensuring specific data is returned. Collaboration and sharing. The workspace can be shared with your collaborators to ensure everyone's working with the same tools or data. Documentation. Postman automatically generates documentation and also sets up mock servers to simulate API behavior during the development. With these features, Postman isn't just a tool, it's a platform that streamlines the entire API lifecycle from design to deployment. In the next section, we'll show you how to set up Postman and start using it effectively. Let's jump in. Open your favorite browser and type in install Postman. After clicking enter, click on the result from the official Postman website. Here we can see the installation file for Windows. If you have any other operating system or generally prefer installing from the command line, you can look through this documentation as well. I'm not feeling experimental today, so I'm just going for the first choice. When the downloading is done, open the file and it will install on its own. It may ask for additional permissions for accessing the network in case you have a firewall in your system. Make sure to accept. You can sign up if you don't have a Postman account. I'm just going to sign in using Google API. After a few minutes, you will be logged in and ready to start. This is what the Postman workspace looks like. Before writing any API request, let's first create a collection. Postman collections enable you to group together your API requests and examples. You can use collections to keep your workspace organized, collaborate with teammates, and generate API documentation and API test. Let's name this API testing and then create a new HTTP request. Now we need a public API to get some kind of response to test our operations. Let's head over to request.in website, which provides public APIs. To get the list of users as a response, we have to use a request like this. Let's write the API using request.in as the base URL. After hitting send, we can see the response body of users and also the response status code, execution time, and the size of the response body. To learn more about status codes, head over to MDN docs. A thing to notice is that post or put is seen in both 200 and 201 statuses, but 201 is only used when a new resource is created. There is also a 204 status code, which holds no body and is used for delete operations. We can also use query params so that the API fetches users from only page 2. Let's write some testing codes. Let's say we want to validate status code for this API. We can use scripts to write the validation code for checking the 200 status code. And if we hit send, we can see the response is okay. Now, let's save this under our collection and move on to the next operation. For the post API, we have to use a body, and that can be in many formats. We will be using JSON under raw data. Let's create a user called Odin who is a warrior. After clicking send, we can see that the status code is 201. That is because we have just created a new user. Let's create the test validation code for this as well. After running the test successfully, save the file and move on to the next operation. Now let's observe that for both put and patch, the operation is update. But what's the difference? You might be wondering. Well, put replaces the entire resource with the edited version, while patch only updates the specific parts of a resource. Now let's head over to Postman, write the code for the update, and obviously we're going to need a body for that. Let's write the testing validation code for this. Oops, I forgot to change the method. Let's change it to push or patch if you want. Yes, and we can see the correct response body. Let's save this file. Now on to our last CRUD operation, which is delete. We are supposed to get an empty response body for this with a 204 code. Let's write the testing code and save this file. Now you might be wondering that why am I saving all these files? In software testing, we need test suites to run the test for all the operations at once. To do that, click on the collection and click Run. And voila, we can see that all the tests one by one. And we can also note different parameters like duration and average test time. One thing that you might have noticed is for all the operations, we're using the same base URL. To reduce this redundancy, we can create an environment. In that, let's create a variable named base URL and put the value http request.in. Now, we can use this variable in each operation instead of using the same URL over and over for each operation. Environment variables also offer security. For example, instead of directly writing the API key value, we can use an environment variable. This can also be used in different environments like development, testing, and production. If you remember, while mentioning key features, I mentioned something like automatic documentation. Now let's see if that's true. Click on the collection and then click on View Complete Documentation. And here we can see that Postman has ready documentation for us for each of the operation. We can also see details and change the language to our preference. If you want to share this workspace with your collaborators, you can also share this environment by mentioning collaborator emails here. Make sure to convert this into a team workspace first. If you're familiar with software development, you may be wondering, why am I not just using console.log instead of using Postman? Postman is essential for testing APIs because it goes beyond console.log by allowing you to directly interact with API endpoints, saving and organizing requests, and simulating real world scenarios with parameters, headers, and authentication. It supports automated testing, debugging, and response validation, offers collaboration and documentation tools, and handles complex workflows like change request. Unlike console.log, Postman works independently of your code, making it easier to isolate and fix API issues efficiently. Now, to recap, we've learned the basics of Postman and why we need it, sending API requests, use environment variables to manage different setups, write basic test scripts for response validation, and organize requests with collection. These are just the basics. Postman has even more powerful features to explore. Now it's your turn to practice and see how Postman can transform your API workflow. Thank you for watching.